Hello class. In this session, we will cover historical perspectives of physical activity, including defining some key concepts that are important for those of you pursuing a career in kinesiology. This is part of module number 3. Let's begin. Let's begin with the word health. What is health? If we use a dictionary, health is defined as the state of being free from illness or injury. However, in 1943, in the book Normal and the Pathological, health is defined as the ability to adapt to one's environment. Health is not a fixed entity. It varies for every individual depending on their circumstances. Yet, we can also define health as the World Health Organization in 1948 as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, including socially and economically productive life. Although health, we assume, is a word defined similarly regardless of the circumstances of the place we're in, we can see how the term has evolved to be more complete, to encompass all the areas. The World Health Organization in 1986 defined health as a resource for everyday life, not the objective of living. Health is a positive concept emphasizing social and personal resources as well as physical capacities. Again, health as an encompassing term in which social, emotional, physical, as well as environmental factors are accounted for. Therefore, we can say that in the basic essence, health is the absence of any disease or impairment, yet it's also a state of being that allows the individual to adequately cope or adapt with all demands of daily life. And it's a state of balance, an equilibrium that an individual has established within him or herself and between himself or herself and his or her social and physical environment. So not so simple when it comes to defining health. We gotta account for many factors. And we can argue that health is in a continuum in which you have perfect health, and the opposite of perfect health is death. There are 3 aspects of health that in its evolution, as it comes to a definition, appear to come up. That is mental health, physical health, and social health. And we will say that that intersection between mental health, physical health, and social health is what we call optimal health. Now, what about wellness? Well, contrary to health, wellness is our constant and deliberate effort to stay healthy with positive lifestyle habits. Wellness is designed to help us improve health and quality of life. Contrary to health, wellness is about the actions and the choices we make to prolong life, to achieve total well-being. Basically, to stay very healthy so we avoid medical care costs. And we know that in the country, medical care costs are constantly on the rise and therefore can have a significant implication on people's financial stability. So wellness is about the actions, choices we make to improve health, live longer, stay healthy, and reduce medical care costs. Wellness impacts health because guess what? We want to live longer. So life expectancy refers to the number of years a person is expected to live based on the person's birth year. And life expectancy is heavily influenced by our health status. Now let's move to the focus of kinesiology as a field of study, and that is physical activity in all its forms. What is physical activity? Physical activity is defined as any bodily movement that is intentional and voluntary, that uses energy and works your muscles, and is produced by skeletal muscle contractions and results in energy expenditure. We have already talked about that physical activity is the focus of kinesiology as a science. So it is very important that we don't forget the definition of physical activity. It is body movement, but intentional and voluntary. Now, sometimes physical fitness is used when talking about physical activity. However, physical fitness is not physical activity. Physical fitness refers to the ability of your body systems to work together efficiently to allow you to be healthy and perform activities of daily living. So we can say that physical activity is a process. Is a process because it's body movement produced by your skeletal muscles that results in energy expenditure. And physical fitness is a byproduct of us being physically active. Physical fitness being the ability of your body to perform activities daily living without being fatigued. And the only way you're going to improve your physical fitness is through being physically active. So physical activity being the behavior, physical fitness being an attribute. They're not the same. So never use them interchangeably. So total physical fitness is the ability to perform moderate to vigorous levels of activity without undue fatigue. There's two types or two forms or two components of physical fitness. We have health-related physical fitness, which is the ability of your body to become and stay physically healthy. And then we have skill-related physical fitness. This is your ability to maintain high levels of performance on the playing field. So skill-related fitness is usually associated with sports. What are the components of health-related physical fitness? Cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, body composition, flexibility, and muscular endurance. So when you are trying to improve cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, body composition, flexibility, and muscular endurance, you are engaging in health-related physical fitness. The goal is to improve these components of health-related fitness. Now, skill-related physical fitness, agility, coordination, speed, balance, power, and reaction time. These are specific for sports or movement forms that are more complex, that require high level of performance. So skill-related fitness is usually associated with sport activities. So athletes will often engage in activities that will enhance or improve their agility, coordination, power, reaction time, balance, and speed. Exercise. Well, exercise is a type of physical activity. How do we know it's a type of physical activity? Well, it is intentional, it is voluntarily, it is performed by your muscles, and it results in energy expenditure. So it meets all the components of the definition of physical activity. The difference is that exercise is a plan, a structured and repetitive movement performed vigorously with the intention to achieve and maintain fitness. So exercise is the type of physical activity you do that is planned, structured and repetitive, of vigorous intensity and effort, that is specifically designed to help you improve fitness. Now, leisure time physical activity is not exercise, but it's activity undertaken during discretionary time. It is not associated with activities as part of one occupation, household transportation, like walking your dog or riding a bike just to ride a bike. jogging, canoeing, using a kayak just to spend recreationally your free time. That is what we call leisure physical activity. Sport. Sport is a type of physical activity with skill movement that is organized in a game situation. It often involves people trying to compete with one another. Players try to achieve a goal in a manner specified by some specific rules. Sport can be performed in competitive and or recreational settings. So we can say that physical activity is somewhat of an umbrella term that is defined as any bodily movement performed by skeletal muscle, intentional and voluntarily, that results in energy expenditure. And as a term, physical activity have many forms: sport, exercise, leisure, occupational physical activity, household chores, and etc. 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 Now, there are many different ways in which we can measure someone's physical activity level. We can measure physical activity in terms of its duration, how long you do it. We can also measure physical activity in terms of its intensity, how hard you do it. We may also measure physical activity in terms of its frequency, how often you do it. And we can also measure or classify physical activity based on the type of physical activity performed. We call those things physical activity dimensions. Duration, intensity, frequency, and type are the dimensions of physical activity in which we are able to measure physical activity in order to account for how often, for how long, how frequently, how hard, and what type people do when it comes to physical activity. It gives us good data for planning and policy purposes. Now let's look at some of the choices of physical activities in the United States. What are some of the most common physical activities performed by people in the US? Walking for exercise is the leading number one choice of physical activity among adults in the United States. Not surprising. Walking is our primary mode of movement, of mobility, of transportation. We wake up, we walk. We walk to the car, we walk to work, we walk. But walking is also done as part of leisure time for people to stay active. Gardening and yard work, those are household activities. Stretching exercises and strength training. These are the leading four physical activity choices for adults in the United States. But if you see at the bottom of the list, you start seeing sports. So while many times we think of physical activity as sports, the reality is that most adults in the United States do not engage in physical activity as a sport. Most of them do it as a leisure time activity or household activity or stretching or strength training because they want to improve some aspect of physical fitness. Now, let's take a 5-minute break to get up, move, stretch, get a sip of water, but just get off the screen, get up and move, and come back. Now let's talk about physical activity, obesity, and chronic disease. What is the relationship of physical activity with chronic diseases? One of the major public health problems that we face in the United States, but also globally, is the physical inactivity epidemic. Are we all at risk? Our lifestyles have become more sedentary. The easy access to fast food, the high calorie intake in most of the food items that we use regularly have resulted in a huge health problem in which physical inactivity is one of the main factors. Sedentary death syndrome is a term associated with the deaths attributable yearly to the lack of health enhancing physical activity. One of the reasons why we face today so many challenges in terms of our health because of physical inactivity is due to the time we spend sitting. There are many dangers for sitting for a very long time. If we think about our work settings, we sit, we go to class, we sit, we stay at home, we sit, we spend too many hours during our day sitting. And this has devastating effects on our health. The reason why we are constantly promoting, constantly advocating for people to stay or even to just be active, if it is for a little while. But there are many, many consequences with sitting for prolonged time, and sedentary death syndrome is a term, again, that has been associated with the number of deaths attributable to the lack of health enhancing physical activity. Meaning it is preventable, but actions must be taken. The reality is that physical activity is a health problem. Physical activity is the second greatest threat to public health. Physical activity has become an epidemic in the industrialized nations. We drive more. We spend less energy doing things. We don't cook. We order takeout. Now they bring the food home, so you don't even have to get out of your house. The reality is that we have added too much sedentary activities to our daily living that's taking a toll on the population in general. These are some of the deaths from lifestyle related risk factors, meaning what are some of those issues or some of those things that people do that are becoming factors in why some of the annual deaths that we see in the country. And you see that tobacco smoking, high blood pressure, overweight and obesity, physical inactivity, and high blood glucose are at the top of the list of the reasons why people die annually. So we must take action to address these issues. The reason why you see many national campaigns for people to quit smoking, for people to maintain or reduce body weight, to people stay physically active, and for people to lower their consumption of sugar, because we have to tackle these lifestyle choices that are affecting the health and well-being of the people in America. Therefore, the big 5 risk factors or leading risk factors in the United States are related to lifestyle choices. Smoking tobacco, high blood pressure, overweight and obesity, physical activity, high blood glucose are all associated often with our lifestyle choices, the decisions we make in terms of what we do. If physical activity is important, why aren't we doing it? There are many reasons. We can talk about cultural values. A society in which physical activity is not a priority or is not valued is a society in which people are not going to be very active. Sometimes we also think that in order to be active, we must exercise or join a gym or have equipment. And the reality is that we don't. You could be physically active without having any type of equipment or without having any gym membership. So cultural values many times have an influence or may affect our decisions to be physically active. We can also talk about technology and how much are we consuming technology today. We spend a lot of time in front of a screen, checking social media, Snapchat, IG, TikTok, you name it. We spend more and more hours in front of a technology device than we do walking, exercising, or being physically active. So is technology part of the reasons why we're not active? Can we use technology more productively so it doesn't affect our physical activity? Those are all good questions, but the reality is that technology has to be accounted for when it comes to the reasons why people are not as active as we used to. We could also say that transportation is another reason. Having a vehicle, taking the bus, compared to riding a bike or walking to work. In the spaces that we live in today, sadly, you need a vehicle to move around. Why? Because of the distance from where you live to the nearest supermarket are many times very far. So vehicles have become a necessity to operate in today's living environments, and therefore may have an influence on the level of physical activity that we do on a daily basis. We can also talk about environmental design and how we design our environments today so people take more escalators than taking the stairs. We have elevators instead of stairs. So even how we design our environments can harm or jeopardize the opportunities we have to stay active. But again, it comes to decision making. You still have the decision whether you take the stairs or the escalator. The reality is that modern conveniences have led to a sedentary lifestyle. We see it everywhere. And when we say sedentary lifestyle, we are referring to a person who is relatively inactive and whose lifestyle is characterized by a lot of sitting. Many years ago, somebody shared with me these images. And an image to represent the reality that we face today. I was born in 1977, so I remember the 90s very well. And I remember that our televisions used to be big boxes, heavy boxes. Most people during that time were really slim. Obesity wasn't necessarily a problem, nor we have been talking about obesity at all. But then we get to the 2000s, and now we're talking about obesity as a problem, obesity as a risk factor, and many chronic diseases associated with obesity. People are not as active, and because they're not active, they're not spending as much energy. However, they're consuming more food. But our televisions today are slim, tiny, and not very heavy. The times have changed, so the actions we take, the steps we take to stay healthy, require us to rethink the way we have been doing things for many years. The challenge to you, future kinesiology majors, future kinesiology professionals, is how will you go about helping this country improve the health and well-being through physical activity. We need many more of you out there fighting the good fight, but you cannot fight a fight you don't believe in. So in order for you to do your part in our quest to reduce obesity, increase physical activity among our population, it requires you to be active. It requires you to embrace physical activity as a lifestyle choice that you engage in every day. So why is kinesiology so popular today? Because our focus is on physical activity. Physical activity is a public health problem, and therefore we must address it. Today, kinesiology is thriving and multidisciplinary field, encompassing expertise from improving athletic performance and preventing injuries to helping people lead physically active lifestyles. And that's why we're so popular today at the college level. That's why so many people are pursuing kinesiology as a field, because they either want to be around athletics, because they either want to become therapeutic experts, whether it's physical therapy, occupational therapy, or athletic training, or because they just simply want to help people be active and have better health.